We're diving deep today into something that I think a lot of families probably deal with, but we don't talk about much. And that is when a grandparent has a criminal record.
Yeah.
And the kind of ripple effects that that can have through a family.
Absolutely. And it's something that is surprisingly common.
Right.
We're talking over 70 million Americans with criminal records.
Oh, wow.
A significant portion of whom, are grandparents.
Yeah, that's a huge number.
It is.
It's really kind of amazing to think about how, one mistake that someone might have made decades ago can still impact their family today.
Absolutely. And what's interesting too is that a lot of times these grandparents don't even realize that they might be eligible to have those records expunged or sealed.
Right.
So they're kind of living with this
shadow.
This burden from their past, and it's preventing them from, fully participating in their grandkids' lives.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that really stood out to me in the source material that we're looking at today, is just how these past mistakes can create barriers for grandparents wanting to be involved in their grandkids' lives.
Absolutely.
Like, for example, one of the things that they talk about is how, if a grandparent has a criminal record, they may not be able to get a job.
Right.
Which obviously impacts their ability to, support their family or to...
Absolutely. And it can create a lot of tension within the family.
Right.
The adult child might be resentful.
Yeah.
That the parent is, not able to contribute financially or help out in the ways that they would like to.
Yeah. And then the grandkids, pick up on that.
Absolutely. They sense that tension.
Yes.
They may not fully understand what's going on.
Right. And I think the source material, kind of touches on this idea of generational trauma.
Yeah.
And how these experiences, even if they're not directly happening to the child, can still have this lasting impact on their, self-esteem and
absolutely,
their worldview.
It can really color how they see the world and their place in it.
And I think one of the things that the source material does really well is it doesn't just focus on the negative.
Right.
It also talks about how there is hope.
There is hope, absolutely.
And there are pathways to healing.
And I think that's what's so important about this conversation.
Yeah.
Because we're not just uncovering a problem.
Right.
We're also exploring solutions.
Solutions. And one of those solutions that they talk about is dealing with the actual criminal record itself.
Yes. Addressing the root cause.
Yes.
Because as we said, many grandparents may not even be aware.
Right.
That there are options like expungement or sealing.
Like there's this door.
Yeah.
That's right there.
It's there.
But they don't even know it's there.
They don't even know it's there. And it could be the key to unlocking a whole new chapter in their lives.
And for their families?
And for their families, exactly.
So let's talk a little bit more about what expungement and sealing actually involve and why they can be so important.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk about expungement, think of it like hitting the delete button on a record.
Got it.
It's like it never happened.
Okay.
Now, sealing is a little bit different. It's more like putting it in a confidential file. So the record still exists, but it's not going to show up on most background checks.
Got it. So it's hidden, but it's still there.
Exactly. And that can be so important for, things like getting a job, renting an apartment, all those things where a past conviction might unfairly hold someone back.
Does the source material talk about any specific cases where...
It does. It does. There's a really compelling story about a grandmother named Sarah. Who had a drug conviction from when she was younger. And this had always kind of held her back, even though she had, completely turned her life around. And when her daughter needed help with the kids, Sarah really wanted to step up.
Of course.
But her past just kept getting in the way.
I can only imagine how frustrating that would be.
It was incredibly frustrating for her.
Yeah.
She was constantly worried about her record being discovered and what people would think.
Yeah. The shame that it might bring on her family.
Exactly. And it wasn't just affecting her, it was affecting her daughter, her grandchildren, the whole family dynamic.
So what happened with Sarah?
So Sarah, with the help of her daughter, learned of expungement. And she was able to get her record cleared.
Wow, that's amazing.
It was life-changing for her.
Yeah.
She was able to get a stable job, a better place to live.
Great.
And most importantly, be a bigger part of her grandchildren's lives.
That's wonderful.
Without that shadow of her past.
Now, I know that the process of expungement or sealing can be kind of complicated.
It can be.
Especially if you don't have any legal background.
Absolutely.
So what are some resources that are available to help people
Well, there are legal aid organizations in many states that specialize in helping people with criminal records.
So they can help you figure out if you're eligible.
Exactly, and they can guide you through the process.
That's good to know.
And there are also some great online resources.
Okay.
One that comes to mind is a website called Erase Your Record.
How do you spell that?
ERASEYORECORD.com.
Okay.
And they have a really helpful step-by-step guide for expungement in Texas.
Okay, so for our listeners in Texas,
yes,
definitely check that out.
Absolutely.
And even for listeners outside of Texas, are there any general tips?
Yeah, for sure.
That people should keep in mind?
First of all, always research the specific laws in your state.
Got it.
Because eligibility varies from place to place.
Right, and not all offenses are eligible.
Exactly.
So you need to kind of know what you're dealing with.
And then gather all of the relevant documentation.
Okay.
So things like court records, sentencing documents, any proof that you've, turned your life around.
Made positive changes.
Exactly.
Got it.
And if you're feeling overwhelmed, don't hesitate to reach out to a legal professional.
Right. It's worth it to get some expert advice.
Absolutely.
Now, even if expungement or sealing isn't an option, are there other things that grandparents can do?
That's definitely.
To address the impact of a criminal record on their family?
One of the most important things is communication.
Okay.
Talk to your loved ones.
Yeah.
Explain your past.
Right. Be open and honest.
Exactly. And, educate them about the criminal justice system.
Yeah, because there's a lot of stigma.
There is.
Around having a criminal record.
And it's important to remember that a past mistake doesn't define who you are.
Right.
It doesn't mean that you can't be a loving and supportive grandparent.
And the source material also talks about being proactive.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you're worried about your record affecting your ability to participate in school activities, talk to the school up front.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Be transparent. And demonstrate that you're committed to being a responsible grandparent.
Yeah, I think that's really important.
It is.
And even if you do encounter some resistance or judgment, don't give up.
Don't give up.
Okay.
Surround yourself with people who support you.
Yeah.
And remember that you're not alone.
The source material also touches on the importance of faith and forgiveness.
Absolutely.
So how does that play into all of this?
Well, for many grandparents, their faith is a source of strength.
Okay.
It helps them to understand their past mistakes, seek forgiveness, and find purpose in helping others.
And I think forgiveness is such an important part of this.
It is.
Because it's not about condoning what happened.
Right.
It's about letting go.
It's about letting go of the anger.
Yeah.
The resentment.
The hurt.
The hurt that's holding you back.
And that can be really hard.
It can be very difficult.
But it's so important.
It is. It's essential for healing.
Now, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about the bigger picture.
Okay.
How do you think our society's approach to criminal justice could be reformed?
That's a great question.
To better support these families?
I think we need to shift our focus from punishment to rehabilitation. Because right now, the system often feels like it's set up to punish people long after they've served their time.
And it ends up punishing the families, too.
Exactly.
So what would this shift look like in practice?
Well, for one thing, I think we need to invest more in programs that help people with criminal records get back on their feet.
So things like job training,
education,
housing assistance,
substance abuse treatment.
Yeah, mental health counseling.
All of that. Because when people are coming out of prison, they're facing a lot of challenges.
Right. And they need support.
They need support.
To be successful. And I think we also need to make expungement and sealing more accessible.
Okay.
Especially for nonviolent offenses.
Right.
That happened a long time ago.
Because right now it's really hard. It can be.
For people to qualify.
And it just creates these unnecessary barriers to housing, to employment.
And it makes it so much harder for families to heal.
It does.
And I think the other thing we need to address is the stigma that surrounds having a criminal record.
Absolutely.
So how do we do that?
Well, I think education is key.
Okay.
We need to challenge the stereotypes. And start seeing people as individuals.
Right. Not just as their past mistakes.
Exactly.
Okay.
And we need to tell more stories about people who have successfully rebuilt their lives.
I love that idea.
Because there are so many inspiring stories out there of people who have overcome incredible obstacles.
And I think those stories can really help to change people's hearts and minds.
Absolutely.
You know, it's really amazing to me how much ground we've covered in this deep dive.
Yeah.
We've talked about the legal stuff, the societal stuff, even the spiritual stuff. It's all connected.
Absolutely. And it all goes back to the idea that a grandparent's criminal record isn't just some isolated event.
Right.
It has this ripple effect on the whole family.
And I think the source material really highlights how there's potential for healing and for growth within these families.
It's not about sweeping the past under the rug.
Right.
It's about finding a way to move forward.
Together,
exactly.
And that's where forgiveness comes in.
Yes.
Which I think can be a really tough concept for some people.
It can be.
Because sometimes it feels like forgiving someone means that you're condoning what they did.
Right.
But the source material kind of reframes that idea.
It does.
And talks about forgiveness as being more about you.
Yeah.
About releasing yourself from the burden of the past.
Absolutely. It's about letting go of that anger and resentment that's holding you back.
Right.
It's not easy.
No, it's not, but it's so important.
It is.
There's this great analogy in the source material.
Oh, yeah.
About how forgiveness is like carrying a heavy stone. You can choose to keep carrying it, letting it weigh you down.
Yeah.
Or you can choose to set it down and walk away.
It's a powerful image.
And it really gets at that idea that forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. It's not about the other person.
It's about freeing yourself.
And the source material also talks about the role of faith in finding forgiveness and in healing.
For a lot of people, their faith is what gives them the strength to confront their past, to make amends.
And to find purpose in helping others.
Absolutely. It's about turning your pain into purpose.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you want our listeners to remember?
I want them to remember that there's always hope, no matter how tough things might seem.
There are resources out there.
Yes, there are people who care, and there's a path forward.
For our listeners who are looking for those resources, we'll be sure to include some links in the show notes.
Great.
To organizations that can help with things like expungement and sealing records. As well as family counseling and support groups.
Remember, you are not alone in this.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
My pleasure.
We hope you found it insightful and empowering.
Yeah.
Until next time, keep seeking knowledge, keep asking questions, and keep striving for a better future for yourselves and for generations to come.